welcome everybody. Today we have with us Arun Nathani, CEO and MD at Cybage Software. Welcome, Arun.
Hi Sunil, thank you for the invite. My pleasure to be here.
So I'll just get straight to it and I'll start, asking. So, obviously the pandemic continues to be on the top of recall, top of mind for everyone. So I just like to know how the IT services industry has changed as a result of the pandemic. What are the trends that have emerged globally and also maybe the India specific trends if they are different?
So how IT industry has changed? And to begin with, these digital shows are now a norm. That's pandemic at work. Whether we are an employee or a customer, everyone is watching an interview like this over a Zoom call in the comfort of our homes, good career, growth, family around, everything is perfect. There is just one nagging concern everyone has, which is how long will this work from home continue? And if it continues, will we pay a price by stagnating with no workplace exposure? And will customers pay a price because of low productivities? And all these doubts are meaningful, and if they have crossed your mind or the mind of your audience, you are not alone. Everyone is wondering about the same subject. Many thought leaders have already spoken about it on this subject, and I am sure you want to know views of Cybage CEO as well. Only difference, I am not definitely a global thought leader. My exposure is very local. This Cybage is my little world, and that's where my learnings reside. So I'll be happy to share those learnings if that works for you and your audience.
Yeah, so what basically I'd like to continue on that only. So you're right. So basically there are two aspects to it. One is your employees and one is your customers. So the thing about employees is work from home is great and all that, but mentoring, idea collaboration, that cannot happen. And also your employees cannot sit at home and understand the clients and your customers. So one aspect
Right.
is your employees and the second aspect is the customers. So I guess when it comes to the customers, you'll also have to change the way you deal with the customers. Like
Right.
customer experience has changed, the user experience has changed. So maybe if you could,
Right.
what you said at the beginning, if you could continue with that, how it affects your employees, one, and customers, and what are the long-term solutions if this pandemic and work from anywhere culture continues.
Okay, Sunil. So here is what we will do. I'll share what Cybase has taught me over the years, and let's see if we can make any sense from our past about the future of IT industry, especially in the backdrop of this pandemic changing event. So when Cybase was a toddler, it was being raised by a middle class mindset. Now, what is middle class mindset? Limited means parents can't afford to compete with others. They need to focus within their four walls, secure future of every family member. No favoritism. We just draw happiness and relationship with all our loved ones. Internal focus, fairness, relationships. These are three simple mantras of middle class. And that's how Cybage was raised. It couldn't spend the money it didn't have to build brand or to attract customers. So instead of benchmarking against peers, we decided to focus internally, create fairness in dealings with customers and employees, and grow through our relationships. And our simple formula worked. With each passing year, we became more successful, comfortable, secure, and happy. All the wonderful things that sometimes appear too good to be true, just like our current work from home setting. Now, by the time we enter our 25th year of existence, this is I think mid 2019, and the ride was so smooth that we started wondering or rather doubting our own success mantra, that our founding principles may have got us here, but are they good enough to take us to the next level? That's the thought that started crossing the minds of even our die-hard veterans. Then as the debates started heating up in our boardrooms, COVID came and overnight things changed. Forget about the merits, the relevance of success mantras itself came under existential threat. How does an organization sustain its internal focus when employees themselves are residing outside the company? How can we deliver fairness to our stakeholders, be it employees or customers, without an opportunity to make even eye contact? And how do we build relationships with those we never even met? So, Cybage had an identity crisis. Fortunately, we were not alone. Every organization, I believe every organization was going through its own identity crisis. COVID had changed their approach towards life. It actually happened in three phases. First phase, working from home with no in-person mentors, employees everywhere had no choice but to become more self-sufficient, focused on their individual delivery excellence, as the room for mistakes was quite less. Now, inspired by the attitude, some organizations, definitely Cybage, we too decided to double down on our internal execution rather than depend on outside stimulus. Even though business opportunities were abundant, we started saying no to many prospects and became very selective in the way we were taking partners, because so that there are no compromises made on existing accounts and our workforce faces least disruptions in an already challenging environment. So, in our case, with both Cybage and Cybagians finding comfort in our first founding principle, internal focus, the outcome for us was quite external. In spite of zero marketing initiatives, the calendar year 2021 witnessed bumper growth in every industry vertical we service, and there were hardly any customer dropouts. We are comfortably on our way to clock one of the highest or probably the highest growth rate in a decade. Then came the second phase. Working in solitude was not the only challenge. All of us now had to worry about the health of the loved ones, take our responsibilities of the elderly, help with household chores. We took turns to babysit or monitor out of school kids. In essence, even if we were the primary bread earner, we had to be fair to other family members, especially when it came to sharing of duties. As organizations, everywhere watched in fascination the fairness trait of their workforce. A few of them, Cybage for sure, we were motivated to uphold our own high standards of impartiality in dealings. With massive open requirements on one side, the temptations were very strong to hire at any cost and just negotiate endlessly with resigned resources. However, these discriminating actions would have been unfair to the existing employees, and they defied our second founding principle: maintain parity between existing as well as prospective employees, even if it comes at the cost of growth. Okay. And yet interestingly, in spite of choosing a stringent path of discipline, our organization strength galloped, and today we proudly stand at over 7,600 employees. Then came the third intervention of COVID. Staying together over a prolonged pandemic led to closer bonds within families. I think IT employees everywhere began to realize that it is not necessary to have a battalion of many friends, social friends. Just few meaningful relationships are all we need to feel complete. You see, their realization on the value of human bonds in many cases in many cases, rubbed onto their employers as well. It was amplified when companies themselves were grieving the loss of some of their employees, especially in the second wave, which in turn led to the birth of many, many social initiatives, which I think the more heart in place, like Cybage itself expanded social initiatives in a massive way to reach out to the affected, underprivileged sections of the society beyond their own employees. Even the business customer level itself, there was a lot of volatility. Some were benefiting from COVID, depending on the business they were in, and some, especially in travel industry, travel vertical, they were collapsing. And we chose to stand steadfast with all our close ones, honoring relationships over business, and which is our third founding principle. Eventually, what happened? The global markets bounced back. Our partners remembered and reciprocated with billing rate increases across the board. Just as Cybage didn't forget those who made it happen, and honored its end of the bargain with full variable, 3 back-to-back appraisals, and another promising one we have slated for April 2022. And that is where our story stands today. The founding principles of Cybage are internal focus, fairness, and relationships that we were kind of beginning to doubt. This pandemic and our employees reminded us of their timeless value. You see, every organization is merely a mirror of its employees. I believe company values are not invented by their founders, but by early employees who bring them to the company, or early customers. Organizations have no really authority to question these values. For companies are mere custodian to pass them from one generation of employees to the next, from one generation of customers to the next. In fact, even if companies want to change them, they can't. The boardroom debates on this subject are pretty much meaningless. Just like this discussion of what we started off with, hybrid work models, the outcome of pandemic. Even if Cybage wants to do it any different, we can't. No organization has a choice. All companies would be extending more autonomy to their workforce, right? The industry as a whole will figure out what's the best hybrid model, and our company will be united in that approach. I'm sure a few eligible ones will work permanently from home, while the rest will enjoy a more flexible home office environment. It will be custom tailored by every organization. Yeah. Of course, the more interesting part of the question is again what we started off talking about. Will it compromise this new work model? Will it compromise our long-term growth of the IT industry, our employees, the success of our customers? Well, it is a big change, and changes do bring disruptions. If tomorrow's world indeed is going to have less in-person interactions, every organization will need, one, stakeholders both on employee and customer side who understand the value of being self-driven. Number 2, intent and methodologies to deliver fairness to those we don't even know personally. And number 3, build relationships with those we have seldom met. And it so happens all these 3 prerequisites, hygiene factors, are institutionalized in our DNA. It's not easy to create these pillars overnight, just because pandemic has come. Value pillars take a long time to nurture. Like in our case, when thousands and thousands of our believers, employees, customers, generation after generation have reminded us constantly of our founding principles, and that is what has put us on the pedestal of thought leadership in tomorrow's post-pandemic world. I think as we enter the golden era, absolutely a golden era of digital adaptation across industries in this post-COVID world.
Yeah. So now you talked about your like employees and partners and all. And one thing you mentioned was like, digital adoption. So that has also increased. We have rapid digitalization, digital transformation, whatever you want to call it. So how are you
Yeah.
and all your partners, organizations embracing the cloud? And are like things like DevOps and all, gaining more precedence because you need to,
Yeah.
quick fix and do things pretty fast. So maybe if you can speak
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, Sunil, see, digital, everything digital, DevOps and new way of doing things, more agile way, more scrums and ALM tools being used. All the things that you hear, which is where the technology world is evolving, for all the enterprises are evolving. Uh, for us, they are more like a backyard, not just today in post-pandemic and environment, even before that. So, Cybage is essentially in product engineering space. So, since we are founded, our focus was exclusively on partnering with uh, independent software vendors or software enabled businesses. This is how, like, Cybage was a internet native kind of organization. When we were founded in 95, that's the time when net was coming. So, the kind of partners that we went for also was new age enterprises a lot more, and or new age technology company a lot more. So, this is how, see, many organizations differentiate in different ways, which is what you do. There's two things, right? What you do and how you do it. So, what we do is partnering with product companies. You will have many large customers. You will, companies like Google and Microsoft and Salesforce, for their product engineering needs, we become their extension, and through the entire ecosystem or many small startups as well. And because our customers, by virtue of their business focus, are there to transform the world digitally. That is their business. They are technology companies, and we, being their extension, are automatically in that journey with them of the digital adaptation that is going around in every industry vertical that we are aware of. So, from Cybage perspective, how we are changing, we are not changing too much, because this is what we always did. Many organizations say that how much is our digital revenue. When you listen to the quarterly results, they say now is 30%, 35%, 40%, 45%. But we don't differentiate like that, because more than 95% of business is product engineering, and product engineering is at the heart of digital transformation that all enterprises globally are adopting. So, that is the what part of what we do and how that is relevant in terms of how the digital world is changing. The second part is how we do things, and I'll be happy to talk about that as well.
Thinking like you're talking of all this digital transformation and data. So how do the emerging tech or deep tech technologies like analytics, AI, do you use AI a lot to analyze all this data? And like also like do you see in the future, say something like a hot topic, the metaverse? Do you think the metaverse will affect you? So all this, like you're already at the cutting edge of technologies, but going forward, do you think something like the metaverse and its allied technologies also affect you?
Yeah, Sunil, see, use the word interesting word metaverse. Uh, I'm impressed. So, these are the kind of rich words that we in the technology world love and love to talk about. Metaverse is a platform. Okay. It's just this year's buzzword is metaverse. Last year might have been blockchain. Then we talk about machine learning and AI and big data. Uh, we have to appreciate the underlying technology implementation and how they work. Right? You might be working on a machine learning project, but that does not mean that your engineers are all experts in machine learning. You might be implementing a data driven environment, but using exactly same primary skills, other than maybe an expert BA or some specialized architect The primary skills will be still similar back-end engineers, similar front-end engineers, and your QA and automation and testing environments. So, we have to be really careful when we talk about using the choice of confusing the choice of platforms with actually have what the technology implementation goes on at the grassroots level in the relationships of what we service our customers. I think there is a bigger question at work. One about not necessarily about what are the different trends that are emerging and what kind of quick adaptation of or evolution of especially IT service providers is happening in that direction in imbibing those new skills and transforming themselves, because many of these skills are automatically you keep evolving in that direction with your partners. In the process, there is a bigger thing at work that we sometimes overlook, and which is, are we practitioners of this digital magic internally more than what we are doing for our partners, because we are also an enterprise as a provider. And I will try to explain that a little more, Sunil, and I will talk about Cybage also in that context, but how we approach the power of digital internally. So, everywhere we turn in the business world, the power of digital disruptions has been providing a transformative edge to those who understand it, right. So, one would hence assume that the IT service pioneers, the industry that we are in, with a knack for digital know-how, should be at the leading transformers of their own internal environments. Yeah. But that is not happening. Question is why? And that is because our enormously successful industry believes it has already perfected the people and process models that are required for our business. Therefore, a winning formula stays unchanged. An outward focus on the evolving needs of our customer base. Yeah. And for instance, now what we are talking right now, presently we are busy capitalizing on the massive appetite for digital transformation, technologies in the global market, all the buzzwords that we are talking about, especially after the advent of COVID. Unfortunately, our steadfast focus on these opportunities has blindfolded us to the threats that this very digital transformation or digital transformation internally poses to our own relevance. Yeah. The point is, IT companies need to first transform themselves to be able to offer efficient transformation services. Yeah. You see, technology companies with their armies of knowledge professionals and customers are sitting on incredible potential to create integrated models that find patterns in their workforce and customer data, patterns that can be used as a basis for transformative software to run the operations of the companies. Yeah. But to seize this opportunity, the IT leaders have to first reinvent their individual leadership style, regardless of the past accolades. Yeah. And we have become practitioners of internal digital execution. However, this popular notion of a sound corporate strategy is extremely growth focused. It makes it difficult for executives to change their thought process with agility. In fact, I believe there is an epidemic failure to wholeheartedly commit to the first step of digital transformation, namely the formation of a data science team with a time investment compelling enough to catch the imagination of the organization overall strategy. So, that should become your differentiator strategy. And there are a few exceptions Cybage stands tall, I believe, among these exceptions. Since the turn of the century, we have been energetically bringing the power of data science to life in the way we conduct our business. This is nothing to do with pandemic, from long time before that. Forming the bedrock of our success is our willingness to rethink our organization's digital charter. It's not really ever about how much data you capture, it's really about how well you turn this data into actionable insights. That is what really matters. So, we are fortunate enough to appreciate the value of machine learning early in our existence, as we worked on identifying those variables and metrics to continuously predict the changing performance and the risk associated with people, processes and projects. We have our transformation teams who lead the organization with our business stakeholders. It's like a tag team. What that does is this approach takes advantage of what our business stakeholders know best, which is the successful delivery of IT projects. And this approach also capitalizes on what our data science team knows best, which is data transformation, predictive and prescriptive analytics, machine learning to optimize the structure and platforms on which these IT projects are delivered. And this is how you build synchronized leadership teams. We actually call our evolving this ecosystem decision minds for digital excellence. If you are keen to understand more offline from this interview, I would welcome you to spend time. We can chat, and I always get fascinated by having any co-traveler in this quest for data excellence. I enjoyed the discussion on how to accelerate corporate and individual digital aspirations.
It's quite interesting. You can actually talk for hours on each of these subjects. So I think like we're coming to the end of the interview. One last question I'll ask is on your core competency, that is about product engineering. So what do you think in the 2020s is going to be the single biggest trend in product engineering, and how that's going to transform the industry? Maybe if you can just end with that.
The biggest trend in year 2022 from product engineering perspective, I think writing is on the wall because of the COVID world and the collaboration that we all have been doing in a remote work environment, which clearly means that the workflow tools which focus heavily on collaboration between employees, employee to employee, projects and employee, customers and projects and employee, all the processes that are built around that, all the companies that are focused on the power of technology for collaboration are the ones which naturally have been in demand for a long time, but now their relevance is way more meaningful. The point to be also noticed here is that any digital collaboration ends up generating a lot more data also. So, which really means that there will be pioneers in product engineering also who will leverage this wealth of data that is being generated to design workflows for decision points. So, it will be very interesting. So, it is not necessarily the workflows will generate data, data may also decide what workflows to implement for meaningful decisions. So, that kind of integration of data and workflows in the collaborative world we live in will be a primary focus, and I think that is what probably the trend would be in this year and beyond.
Thank you, Arun, for those insights. It's been a real pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. I really enjoyed talking to you. It was a privilege spending time together. I wish you and all your audience a healthy, safe, and a prosperous year 2022.